Quick overview of the halachas of what's called Bein HaMitzarim. Right? We refer to it as the 3 weeks between Shivas B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. In halachic vernacular, we refer to it as Bein HaMitzarim. Bein HaMitzarim means between the straits. A lot of us have been hearing a lot about straits over the last few months. Tsaras means narrow. Okay? It does not mean specifically at the root, it means a narrow place. Because when a person is in tsar, when a person is in pain, we get tunnel vision. And that's how Hashem's way for allowing us to protect ourselves, to hyper-focus and make sure that whatever we're going through is taken care of. But that's why when a person is going through a difficult time, it's important to reach out and to discuss with others and to be there. Because when there's tzara, we become very narrow. Bein HaMitzarim is referred to as the time between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Now, what is Bein HaMitzarim and why is there 3 weeks of certain elements of mourning during this time? So the Gemara in Tainus, Halachas on the base, page 28b, lists 5 tragic events that occurred on the 17th day of Tammuz, which was this past Thursday. First of all, the initial set of luchos were broken due to the sin of the golden calf. When Moshe came down and he saw that we were dancing around the golden calf, that was Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, 17th day of Tammuz. He threw it down and he broke the luchos. That's number 1. The second tragic event, the Gemara says, is it was the first time that the Karban HaTamid, the constant offering, was not brought due to the siege of Nebuchadnezzar. When the Romans laid siege around Yerushalayim, the Gemara tells us every day they would, from inside they would lower gold coins to the outside, and the army that was laying siege, the Romans would a high payment for an animal, and they would send up an animal. The whole story, how an elderly Jew got it to stop, and one day they sent a PIG up the walls of Yerushalayim instead of the animal, and it says there, Batal HaTamid. From then on the Talmud was Batal. Rabbi Berkowitz had an idea that he spoke about at Shal Shuras. But on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz was the first day that the Karban HaTamid, the constant Karban, was not brought due to the siege. The third tragic event the Gemara lists is that the walls of Yerushalayim were breached, which led to the destruction of the Bayis Sheni, led to the destruction of the second temple. So, there's a fast that we have, good morning, there's a fast that we have called Asara B'Teves, okay? Asara B'Teves is a week or so after Hanukkah ends. That's when the siege started. On Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the walls of Yerushalayim were breached. And then 3 weeks later, the Beis HaMikdash was actually destroyed, and that was Tisha B'Av. The fourth tragic event the Gemara lists in Tainus, again, 28b, is there was a public burning of Sifrei Torah before the destruction of the second temple. That took place on the 17th day of Tammuz. And also, in Egal Azov, a second golden calf, not from the desert obviously, but from our own, was erected inside the Beis HaMikdash to show how far, this shows how far Kal Yisrael had fallen. So the Gemara again is listing 5 tragic events of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the first day of Bein HaMitzarim, the first day of the 3 weeks. The Gemara then goes on to list 5 primary tragedies that took place on the 9th of Av, 3 weeks later. Okay? So we're going to deal with the bookends of this time of tragedy. The first primary tragedy listed is the Meraglim returned and reported Lashon Hara about the land of Israel. The second tragedy is the first temple was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. The third tragedy is the second temple was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. The fourth tragedy is 52 years after the second temple was destroyed, Bar Kokhba led a revolt against the Romans, and tens of thousands of Yidden were killed on Tisha B'Av. And the fifth is the Roman officer Turnus Rufus plowed over Yerushalayim to make it that it's absolutely desolate never to be rebuilt, never to come back. He wanted to make sure there was never a memory of Yerushalayim as the center point for our relationship with Hashem. Okay, now, we refer to this time period as the 3 weeks, and there's different levels of mourning that we observe during this time period, and it intensifies starting from this past Thursday, starting from the 7th day of Tammuz. It intensifies as we get closer and closer to Tisha B'Av. Okay? As we get closer to the 9th day of Av, and we're going to go through various halachas of mourning that we have. Now keep in mind, outside of these halachas, there's a way that we conduct ourselves as well. The purpose of the halachas is to get us into a mode, into a zone where this is not the greatest time for the Jewish people. A lot of tsaras, a lot of difficulties happen to Klal Yisrael during this time, and therefore, in addition to everything that we're going to learn, it's wise for a person to keep that in mind when making decisions what to do and how to conduct ourselves during the 3 weeks. You don't need to do more than the halacha says, but it's wise to just be in that mode, in that zone. For instance, if someone has a close family member that's sitting Shiva, it's not the best time to go on a trip to Six Flags. Right? I think we don't know. Is it against halacha? If you're a grandchild, maybe different halachas about that. But if your close friend who you're dealing with is sitting Shiva, or a close family, like it's not right. It's not becoming to be out there doing extremely joyous things. So mentioning that in a way of just atmosphere of the 3 weeks is an atmosphere of where always a person should be happy and secure in Hashem, but it's a time of a little bit of restraint as far as joy. Yeah.
Is the Yetzer Hara stronger at this time?
Why would he be?
Because it's more fragile, maybe, or...
Not sure. Not sure. I don't know.
I know you don't want to get married, probably. We're going to say, what about the shower brachas?
Good. So, okay. Let's get into this. Ashkenazim don't get married, as we'll see. Sephardim could. All right. So let's start with the halachas that start by 3 weeks. So the first activity that we'll discuss, which we refrain from during the 3 weeks, is taking haircuts and shaving. This applies to any hair on the body. Men and women are included in this. Okay? So any hair on the body, we don't start with haircuts. As far as children are concerned, an adult should not cut a child's hair, but any hair that's causing the child to be uncomfortable is permitted to be cut as long as the child has not reached the age of chinuch. Okay? Different families, there's going to be different ages, 3, 5, 6, 9, depending on what is happening within the chinuch, and different families have different customs as well. This applies until the week of Tisha B'Av. As we're going to see, there's 3 points where mourning starts. There's 3 weeks, there's 9 days, and then there's even a higher level of mourning during what's called Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. The week that Tisha B'Av falls out is even a higher level of mourning. Okay? So Thursday, the 3 weeks started. Next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday is going to be Rosh Chodesh Av. That's when we start the 9 days. That's Wednesday. But Shavua Shechal, that's not the week that Tisha B'Av falls out. Tisha B'Av falls out the next week. Okay? So the week that Tisha B'Av falls out has even more stringency. So this that we're saying, one is permitted to cut the hair of a child whose hair is making them uncomfortable and they haven't yet reached the age of chinuch. This is until the week of Tisha B'Av. Once you hit the week of Tisha B'Av, once you hit Saturday night, let's say Shabbos, immediately prior to Tisha B'Av, then we don't cut anything. Now there are some exceptions. An exception is if a woman's cutting her hair for the purpose of tznius. Okay? Various reasons. It could be for mikvah, it could be just for length, let's say for a hair covering, but somebody feels that I'm not doing it because I'm doing it to get I think it's called, I don't know, perm, or I want to like freshen up. I'm doing it more for tznius. It's not, more for tznius. So then it's mutter. Also, if a woman who's embarrassed not to shave her legs, it's permitted to do so, as elements of tznius in that as well. It's permitted to tweeze, so one would be permitted to tweeze eyebrows, things that are standard and normal for somebody to do. Rav Shlomo Zalman holds that that's okay. Another exception would be that one is permitted to take a haircut and shave if not doing so would result in a monetary loss. So if, let's say, they have a job interview and they have to put their best foot forward, or they have a big business deal and the industry that they happen to be in is one where everybody's very well kept, which is very unusual nowadays, but if you happen to be in such an industry, then it will be mutter, and this only applies until the week of Tisha B'Av. Okay? Again, Shvu Shechal Bay, we don't rely on these leniencies. We don't call it a leniency. It's mutter, it's permitted. But during the week of Tisha B'Av, even in all these scenarios, a person should refrain. So if you see yourself getting to a place like that, try to take care of it before the week of Tisha B'Av. It's also permitted for a man to trim any sort of hair around their mouth if it's interfering with eating. So sometimes men who have beards, or sometimes by the time you hit the third week, a lot of people, they have hair already coming down around their mouth, and now it's getting in the way of eating. So then those hairs are permitted to trim, permitted to cut. And there's interesting shaila, what about shaitels? Because shaitels is not a natural hair. So if it's for the purpose of tznius, sometimes people feel they want it's a little more tznius if it's not so long or whatever. So ideally one should try to be machmir on shaitels, but if they're doing it for the purpose of tznius, then there's no issue. Same as we said if it was a person's natural hair. So that's a little bit of an overview of the halachas of haircuts and shaving, and that starts already from this past Thursday. That starts Shavasar B'Tammuz. Another category of mourning that we take on starting Shavasar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, is music, singing, and dancing. Okay, we're going to put that all into one category. So the halacha is that it's forbidden to listen to music during the 3 weeks. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein writes this applies even to recorded music. You can get into a whole logic. Oh, I'm not listening to music, I'm listening to a recorder.
Yeah.
Right? Let's do a recorder. And the reason why this might be a little bit of a loophole is going on to a What's Up With That class we gave, is there's even opinions that if you hear a bracha in a microphone, you didn't hear the bracha, you're not hearing anything. Right? So if you're going to be strict on that, maybe be lenient here. But, and say you're not really listening to music. I'm listening to a tape recorder. I'm dating myself. You're listening to Spotify or Amazon Music, whatever, right? So, but we don't listen to live or recorded music, and this applies to men, women, and children who have reached the age of chinuch. Children that are under the age of chinuch, again, different customs as to what it is. There's no problem listening to music. Now, what about a cappella? A cappella has gotten very big in recent days, and AI is now creating music that is basically the same thing as a cappella because there's no instruments. The whole thing is artificial. The entire thing is artificial. So, recorded singing that's not accompanied by music, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says a cappella one shouldn't. He doesn't say it's usher. Doesn't say it's forbidden. Other places can say it's forbidden. It seems to be frowned upon if it's the type of a cappella that's made to sound like music. However, if it's made to sound like a person singing, then I would say most people in our circles are lenient, seem to be lenient. So you have a cappella, meaning you'll have people sit down and they record a kumsitz, right? Or you have just somebody singing a song. It's common, or a choir singing together, but there's no added instrumental beats to make it as if it's live music. That type of music, it seems that people are lenient on. But a type of a cappella that's trying to sound like real music, and it does sound like real music, it seems to be frowned upon. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's forbidden. There's a lot of people that do it, but it seems like, at least for me, I'm not really sure. It sounds the same as live and recorded music. So if you want to get into the mode of, if Chazal were trying to put us into a mode of avelos, it seems like it's not appropriate. That's how I would put it. Okay. Now what about dancing? So we don't dance during the 3 weeks. As the Mishnah Berurah writes from the Shulchan Aruch, right? We don't dance at all during the 3 weeks. Now there are some exceptions to these, and that is the Muni open?
Yes.
It is. Okay. The Muni, as far as I understand, it's a show. It's a Broadway, like a Broadway type of show. So let's say you have a story that's accompanied by music. You're listening to a story and there's background music as the person's talking. That's mutter. That's permitted. It's not about the music, it's about the story. The same way when you walk into Schnucks, they often have music on. It's background. You're not there to listen to music. You're shopping. And they have something in the background. You don't need to run out. Right? But since the music is secondary to the story, it's not considered music. So to go to a show, for those who will go to a show, and they have a song here and there, it seems it's not forbidden. But to go to a musical, where it's all about music, that seems that's live music, and that would seem to be a problem. Okay, one is not required to leave a place where music is being played, as long as, again, it's not their intention. I'm not going there to listen. It's like, oh, I need to listen to music. Let me walk into the supermarket. I'm gonna go wait in my doctor's waiting room. I just need to hear music. Okay. Music is also permitted to alleviate health problems. If I'm not there listening to music for pleasure or for joy, some people, let's say they're artists, or let's say they work better with background, just keeps their mind at ease and calm. They're working, and there happens to be music, that's also mutter. That's also permitted. Therapeutic exercises. Okay, when a person's exercising for therapy, that can be accompanied by music if it's going to enhance the performance of the effect of the exercise. Now, notice the words, therapeutic exercise. Again, we're not dealing with like, oh, if I listen to music, then I could lift 250 pounds and instead of 200-pound barbells, or whatever they're called. It's not what we're dealing with. But if a person, it's important for their health to walk for X amount of time every day. It's important for their health to move around. And in order to get that done properly, they need music on their ears to help that effect. That is now considered listening to music to enhance the performance of the exercise, as opposed to it being for pleasure, and it's mutter, and it's permitted. Okay. In another area that Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky writes, and I've seen this in other Sfarim as well, is what if a person is driving at night and they feel tired? So he says if a person is turning on music to make sure that they're safe to stay awake and they don't get drowsy, again, you're not doing it for pleasure, you're doing it to be safe. And again, there's a fine line between all these things, obviously, right? We're adults, and hopefully we're mature, and we're not playing around with it. But a person senses, I'm getting tired, and if I have some music, I could get home a little safer. It's appropriate to listen to music. It's appropriate to turn the music on, sing along with the music, stay awake, and not to chas v'shalom put oneself into a situation of sakana, of danger. Another exception when it comes to music is when it comes to playing an instrument. So a Jewish musician is permitted to play at a non-Jewish function for livelihood. If you're being paid for it, it's mutter. The person is not obligated to take a loss of work. The same way by taking a haircut, right, for work, you know what I'm saying? So if you have an opportunity to play at a Jewish event, could be a problem, because then you're helping them in doing something wrong, and one l'chora should give up on the job. But if a person's a professional musician and their purpose that they're playing is for livelihood, and I said they get paid, you could find situations you're not getting paid. But let's say you're doing it because you're part of a band and they're playing a gig somewhere and you're getting your name out. Again, it's part of the livelihood that's there. That would be mutter. Likewise, one is allowed to become a professional, and if you're studying to learn how to do it, and it's not for pleasure, and the person teaching you, ideally, if you have a Jewish, a religious music teacher and a religious student, so you could wait till after the 3 weeks, unless you need constant practice, then practice a little bit at home. But in general, where we don't have that, it's permitted to teach music, it's permitted to learn music. But if a person is not intending to earn a livelihood as a musician, the Moshe Feinstein says, if I'm just, let's say my kid wants to learn how to play piano, or to play guitar. Why? As a hobby. It's not like they have a future in it per se, and this is something they want to go into. So Moshe Feinstein says there's no reason to do it during the 3 weeks. You can put it on hold. Like, what's the big deal? So you'll fall a couple classes behind, you didn't know, so you don't need to do it then, right? But if a person is earning towards a livelihood, then it would be permitted to take those lessons during the 3 weeks. Okay. Cutting nails. So until the week of Tisha B'Av, it is absolutely permitted to cut one's nails until, again, during 3 weeks, no problem. 9 days, no problem. Shvua Shechalbo, the week of Tisha B'Av, one should refrain from cutting their nails according to some Paiskim. However, even during Shvua Shechalbo, even during that week, if a person is doing it for hygiene, or a person is doing it for a mitzvah, for example, let's say they're going to a mikvah, and their nails are too long for mikvah. Okay? What nails too long? So there's different, some people, there's different length of what's too long. The understanding that I have of if a person looks at the inside of their palm and they can only see the top of their fingernail, that's short enough. That's okay. Once it gets longer, then it's part of it is not really part of the body anymore, and a person should ideally cut that for mikvah. So let's say for mikvah, for a mitzvah, or hygiene, even during Shvua Shechalba, even during the week, it is permitted to cut one's nails. Okay? Fine. Now what about purchasing new items? Purchasing new items. So, a lot of people aren't aware of this. It's not taught so much, and I haven't done this in a long time. But I remember when at my bar mitzvah, and when I first got married, at my bar mitzvah, I made a bracha when I put on my suit before Shabbos of Malbish Arumim, okay, who is unclothed. I made the bracha in the morning. But my father's kind of bracha told me when I put on, he bought me a nice suit at Gage Menswear. That was my father. I've shared a number of times. He was not into running around looking to get sales. He would quote the Chafetz Chaim. A lot of people spend their time trying to save money. I save my time by spending money. Prefers to have time than money. Could utilize his life. So we had a corner store down Mount Wilson Lane from Yeshiva called Gage Menswear. For me, it was very fancy. I remember my mitzvah suit was $330, which I think is still expensive. Pretty expensive for a suit. But there's also these other stores. You could buy a suit for $100. My father was down the block. My friends had like 2 or 3 inexpensive suits from deal. I had one suit. That's all I needed. One suit. And you wore it till you grew out of it, or you wore it, but that's it. We were in and out of the store in 10 minutes. That was it. Gage Menswear, it's on the corner, we buy it, we leave. That was his thing. So, at my bar mitzvah, when I put on my suit, my father told me I could make a Malbish Arumin and a Shechianu. If a person gets a beautiful new garment that they're excited about, you make a Shechianu. People aren't aware of that. It's good to know. Okay? You buy something beautiful for yourself, whether it's during the week or for Shabbos or for Yom Tif, Same way when you eat a new fruit, it's exciting, and you make a shachianu. You have new clothing that's beautiful. You make a shachianu. Thank you, Hashem, for bringing me to this time and for giving me this beautiful article of clothing. Now, in the bracha of shachianu, we say Hashem is the source of all bracha. Shachianu, He gave us life. V'kiyamanu, He sustains us. V'giyanu, and He brings us lazman hazeh, to this time frame. So the Shulchan Aruch writes that it's proper to refrain from anything that will obligate a shechianu, because we don't want to make a statement that we're happy for this 3 weeks. Lazman hazeh. We're happy when it's Hanukkah, right? We're happy every day. But during the 3 weeks, there's an element of restraint, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch writes that it's appropriate to refrain. The Magen Avram writes that this doesn't apply to Shabbos during the 3 weeks. Shabbos, one could make a shachianu. That's what the Magen Avram writes. The Arizal writes it does apply on Shabbos also. Okay, that's the Arizal. We don't always paskin like in Arizal. We do paskin often like in Magen Avram. Okay, but therefore, because of this, if one wants to eat a new fruit during the 3 weeks, best to wait for Shabbos. New clothing, it's permitted to buy during the 3 weeks. You can buy whatever you want as far as the laws of the 3 weeks. But new clothing that requires a shehechiyanu when worn should not be worn during the 3 weeks, because we don't want to make the shehechiyanu. So again, it's permitted to purchase. If you're going to make a nice purchase, a nice dress, a nice thing, wow, find the mitzvah, this is great. This type of outfit that I'll make a shehechiyanu on. But one should not wear it during 3 weeks. Now, nowadays when clothing is purchased more frequently, people have bigger wardrobes, which apparently, even though we have bigger wardrobes, none of us have anything to wear, despite the bigger wardrobes. The joke is though that men look at women's closets and they say, how could you have nothing to wear? And then the woman walks open to the fridge and says, how can you say we have nothing to eat? It goes both ways. Men always think there's not enough food in the fridge. Okay. And the fridge is full of stuff you don't need, and the closet's full of stuff you don't need. Baruch Hashem. Right? But nowadays where things are purchased, it's not only because we buy more, but a lot of things aren't the same quality, whatever it is. So we don't feel the same degree of joy on a lot of our items, and therefore there's really no issue on most items. However, the Chafetz Chaim Misharatzian writes that even if one will not make a shechianu, clothing that will bring simcha to a person, also it's not, a person should it's worthwhile to refrain from wearing it for the first time during 3 weeks. Okay, so again, I'm trying to compartmentalize the halacha and the atmosphere that we're trying to create in our life. But again, as far as the laws of 3 weeks, there's no restrictions on purchasing. As far as wearing, don't wear or eat things that will cause a shechianu during the week. Magen Avram writes Shabbos is going to be okay. Yeah, a talus, by the way, for men wearing a talus, a new talus, you make a shechianu to be a new talus. Yeah, go ahead.
Trying it on in the store to see if it fits. If it's something that wouldn't require shechianu,
it's not yours. There's nothing exciting to. It doesn't bring any joy to try something.
What was the question?
If the question is, what if it's a type of garment that would require shechianu, but right now I'm just trying it on in the store. I haven't bought it yet. So that's okay. It's not yours, so it doesn't. Yeah.
What about something that you just buy to wear to work, let's say? Not like, just cat clothes you wear to work.
So you don't make a shechianu on it?
You don't need a shechianu.
No. Shechianu is a uniquely special garment. Something that makes you, this is like, psh.
Getting back to what Binyamin was saying, are you allowed to buy something during the 3 weeks to wear after the 3 weeks?
Yes. Yeah, because it doesn't require shechianu to buy it. Yeah. Rav Ramesh is asking, in addition to trying on, can you even buy it? The answer is yes. You can even buy something that would require shechianu, just don't wear it till after Tisha B'Av. Okay. Giving presents is permitted until the 9 days, until Rosh Chodesh. However, expensive gifts that would require a shechianu shouldn't be given during the 3 weeks, because then the person will make shechianu. Now, even if they don't use it, we don't give those gifts. Swimming, showering, all these things for the 3 weeks is no problem, no restrictions. However, one should refrain from doing things that are potentially dangerous. Okay, so you'll find, for example, like in the day camp that we run, certain trips I'll plan out for during the 3 weeks, and certain ones for during the 9 days. So, for example, I try to make, the kids enjoy going to Top Golf. Kids enjoy Top Golf. Because when you come as a group with kids, first of all, they get, Top Golf, and they serve you free soft drinks. Now, it's free for the kids. The camp has to pay for it, but it's fun. But it's fun. Now, Top Golf, unless you're hitting the ball backwards, has very limited risk. So Top Golf is a type of trip that I'll plan for the 9 days. I keep this in mind. Swing around fun down, which there's go-karts, safe, but kids do, there is a little banging around, and bumper boats, whatever, a little more risky. So I try to not do that during the 9 days. Right? Try not to do that during the 9 days. Zip lining, I try not to do it during the 3 weeks at all. You're going very out, So these are things that I keep in mind. Huh?
Go skydiving.
I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying no, and I'm not sharing a halacha. I'm sharing this as a way of being thoughtful. It's a way of being thoughtful. Okay, so this Wednesday is like still 3 weeks, but it's not the 9 days. So we're taking them to the Gateway Grizzlies baseball game. Right? It's less. It's less risky. It's a lot of fun, but then sharing this as a way of just creating patterns for ourselves. That swimming's okay, there's no problem, but to go do something in water that is risky may not be wise. Again, it's a time of tzaras for Klal Yisrael. Not that we're scared anything's going to happen, but refrain from it. It's wise to refrain. Okay. Rav Shmuel Vosner writes that during the 3 weeks, surgical procedures, if they're non-emergency, try to push it off till after or do it before. Again, one of these things that could be easily scheduled. See, Rav Vosner writes, any surgical procedure, do before, do after, take it out of the time of tzara for Klal Yisrael. Not a halacha, but he says that's a wise thing to do. Okay, so that's what we have to know from this past Thursday up until next Wednesday, which is the beginning of the 9 days. Let's get into the 9 days, which means the final 9 days of the 3 weeks. Okay? That starts from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av. Starting from Rosh Chodesh Av, the Shulchan Aruch writes that during the week, if it's not Shabbos and it's not a Sudas Mitzvah, we refrain from eating meat and drinking wine during the 9 days. There's 2 reasons brought in halacha for this prohibition. Number one is, the Aruch HaShulchan writes that practically, meat and wine are the epitome of indulgence, like a good festa meal, a good meal. And the Gra says, based on the Gemara in Bava Basra, page 60, Daf Samach, it brings down that after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, a lot of Yidden completely stopped eating meat and drinking wine. Ever. They completely stopped. And the Gemara says that their thought process was, if the Mizbeach doesn't have meat and wine anymore, how can we put it in our own bodies? There's no meat on the Mizbeach, there's no wine libations. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's house doesn't have meat and wine, our house shouldn't either have meat and wine. And there were a lot of Yidden that had this sensitivity. Until Rabbi Yeshua came along, says the Gemara, and he told them they shouldn't be doing this, as sensitive as it is, because he says, since most people can't abide by this level of mourning, It's not proper. We don't put things on Yidden or even start customs that proves to be very hard on people. And therefore he told them, as great and as thoughtful as it is to do that, it's too much. It says the Gemara, from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av is not too much for people to handle, and therefore this became the custom. This is what we all do. Okay? And it's important to know this, because sometimes when we don't know why it's important to not have meat and drink wine, we're looking for a siyum. We're looking for if there's a siyum, enjoy. And when Pesach Kron, may he be well, was in shul, he actually shared him, I think 2 times ago. So I don't know how long ago that was. I'm not good with years. But he shared a beautiful thing. He says, I forgot who he was quoting, that one of the reasons why built into halacha is that at Sudas Mitzvah we do eat meat and drink wine is because it atones for sinas chinam. Right? When you make a siyum, and now there's a mitzvah for people to join you, so it actually is part of the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. To bring people together in a way of Torah, which I thought was a beautiful. It changed my view on why people make siyum during the 9 days. I was like, okay, you make a siyum because you want meat and wine. I forgot he was quoting, but it adds a beautiful element to it. No, it's not because I want meat and drink. I want to bring it together. Right? We want to atone for that friction, for that separation. But we don't eat meat and drink wine for the final 9 days because Chazal felt that this custom is not too difficult to handle. This prohibition applies to children as well once they've reached the age of chinuch. Any frail child who would benefit from eating meat or chicken, they need the protein, whatever it is if they're not bar bas mitzvah, let's say they're very picky eaters. They only eat chicken. They only eat meat, whatever it is. Okay? So then it's okay. They're not bar mitzvah, even if they've reached the age of chinuch, they need it for their nutrition, it's going to be okay. Now this applies to meat, chicken, anything cooked in that dish, so a cholent which has meat in it, also we won't eat during the week. On Shabbos there's no problem, it's a mitzvah. But it doesn't apply to vessels. You could use meat vessels, there's no issue with that. This applies to wine and grape juice. The Mishnah Berurah writes, yikes, okay, I don't know what time it is. The Mishnah Berurah writes in Siman Tavkuf Nun Aleph that a person who is unable to eat dairy food is permitted to eat meat during the first 6 days of Av. Okay, so he says, let's say somebody has, they have an allergy to dairy. So what he's supposed to, very limited. Fruits and vegetables for 9 days. You got to get, you need protein, you need health, you need nutrition. So in Tovkov Nun Aleph, Sifkat and Samach Daled, the Mishnah Berurah writes that a person who's unable to eat dairy is permitted to eat meat up until 3 days prior to Tisha B'Av. Okay? So that's important. Also, a nursing mother is allowed to have chicken or meat if it's going to be detrimental to her milk for the child, again, because since a child doesn't have the chiyuv under the age of chinuch, right? They don't need to. So the baby's getting the nursing from the mother. If the mother needs the nutrition from the child, then also it would be permitted. There's what time was. We'll hold it here. I think we got pretty much most of it in, but let's take your question. Go ahead.
How about if the baby has a breast? Is father allowed to drink
Sudas
wine?
mitzvah. Yeah.
So that's okay during the 9 days?
Correct. For a mitzvah, there's no problem. Okay. Shikayah.